The topic today is certainty, and the topic is title is "Certainty is the key to happiness." Certainty is the key to happiness, and certainty is the thing that we aspire in order to have happiness. And the certainty in faith is something that I aspire to have too. So when I do these talks, there are sometimes topics that God wishes for me to talk about, and it's not often that He's done it like this. He's told me ahead of time, and He wants me to do it like this. He wants me to say this. If I ask God for the words to speak, then God says to say this, Mr. Roman. If God wishes you to speak on a topic that is a topic that is for people to listen to and to understand, better because your words may not be the words that you think are not good enough to hear, then the words that you hear are the words that God helps Mr. Roman to speak. And this is the way Mr. Roman speaks to God. Certainty is the key to happiness is what God tells Mr. Roman to say. It is something that he understands too better than he has understood before. Because when certainty is something that he hasn't had, because certainty is something that has eluded him because of addiction. Addiction is something that has been a scourge in my life, and it's something that has not consumed me to a degree where I haven't been able to have a life. But it's been a life that I've been able to achieve more than what many might have said, believe an addict who struggles with addiction is able to achieve. Even though I may have had been lucky too in many ways in regards as well. But certainty is the key to happiness, what I believe is a true thing that we can look at it from different ways. And God says to say, if certainty is you looking into a screen, wondering what the words might be, then that's not certainty, that's uncertainty. Uncertainty is the thing that people have when they're not sure what's going to happen the next day or the next hour or the next minute. An addict lives with uncertainty all the time. An addict who lives on the street, or an addict who has nothing, or an addict who needs to score all the time, is an addict who is always filled with anxiety and always trepidation as to what happens next. That's uncertainty. Uncertainty of what is to happen, uncertainty of what can happen, uncertainty of what will happen. Uncertainty leads to unhappiness, and unhappiness is something that addicts live every single day. They live it because they breathe it, they live it because they are it, and they live it because they shed it, and they also give it to others too. Uncertainty is the thing that addict families have for their family member who is an addict. An uncertain family member is a person who is uncertain of whether or not their addict loved one is going to live or is going to die. Uncertainty leads to more despair, and uncertainty leads to hate, and uncertainty leads to lies and a lack of truth in people's lives, because the lack of truth is what people believe is the most important thing that they need when an addict needs to score and needs to get drugs, because they need to lie in order to be able to continue their addiction. If they have family members in their lives, they don't wish to hurt them, but they also don't hurt them as well. They're uncertain whether or not they will or won't hurt them, because they're uncertain how much they will or will not get in the way of them being able to get high. When an addict is high, when an addict has gotten high, or an addict has gotten well, if you're an addict that has opiates as your addiction, then the addiction of opiates is one where you only need to get well. You don't need to get high. You don't need to get crazy out of your mind in order to be able to feel like you've had enough drugs for the moment, for the day, or for whatever period you may be around family members. And it is a sad story that addicts who have a physical addiction like heroin or fentanyl will get high around their family, but they'll hide it. They're uncertain too how much time they'll be with their family, so when they have family events, if they disappear, the likelihood is they are going to go and get high. But a responsible addict, which is a word to say that may not seem something that is real for a family member or someone who knows addicts, or someone who doesn't know addicts, to believe it's possible to speak about an addict. A responsible addict will not get overly high, especially if they have time to spend with family members or children. Many will, and many make that mistake, but many will try to only get well, and get well is still impaired, and get well is still something that an addict shouldn't get if they're going to drive. But an addict that has to get high is an addict who lives uncertain the entire day. There's a struggle of complete anxiety that exists. It just simmers inside of them. So certainty was something that an addict could feel, an addict could learn, an addict could embrace, and certainty is something that an addict could use as a doorway to go to the next part of what could be a much better life, which certainly would be a much better life, because the certainty of what certainty can bring is that an addict who is certain is an addict who knows, first of all, that certainty without addiction is certainty where they won't have to be a slave to the drug. The drug doesn't make the decisions for them, so they're certain that the drug will not. An addict who struggles in recovery is an addict who's still uncertain, but an addict who lives with certainty at the other side of recovery, who knows that they're recovered or can be recovered, is an addict who is more certain if they are an addict who strives to recover as well. An addict who just begins the recovery is an addict who is more certain right off the bat. And a common thing that addicts will say, people will say when they struggle with addiction, is that the little things start to become a little bit more beautiful, little things in life that they didn't notice before. It is the certainty of what's going to happen next is what allows them to have that respite from the anxiety that addiction can bring you. It brings you pain, it brings you suffering, and it brings you things that you know for certain will happen, but those are things that are not healthy for a person of any sort of walk of life to experience. Uncertainty is the thing that kills an addict, because an addict who gives into uncertainty is an addict who gives into an uncertainty that leads to a certainty that uncertainty is their state of living. And if they live that state of uncertainty is a state that they cannot escape. If an addict cannot live in any other way than to live with an addiction that doesn't let them escape into a different type of life, then that addict will die. That addict will leave the life that they have. They will leave the family for good. They will leave the children. They will leave the things that they love, and they will never return to them unless the family, unless the loved ones, unless there are people in their lives who still believe in them. The certainty of some people that remain in people's lives that are addicts are people that are gold for those people. You have someone that believes in you, have someone that doesn't let you go, but may not always be there for you, may not always be there to sit and take your anxiety. You take the uncertainty of what it is to be around you, because it is something that you give someone else who is not trying to be an addict like you, but is someone who is not an addict, or someone who is just trying to be sober, who is a friend, who may have been someone, or someone who loves you, that may have been there for you, tries to be there for you. An addict who struggles with their own addiction, who tries to help a fellow addict, is an addict who also lives in a certain world and certain life as well. But an addict who strives, an addict who tries, is an addict who lives those moments of certainty too. When they're certain that they will be able to leave addiction, those moments of clarity that addicts have when they leave the draw of needing to get high, are those moments when they think clear enough where they can feel certainty. And certainty is what they feel, is when they know that they're not going to get high. An hour of certainty, 30 minutes of certainty, is the possibility for them to believe that life is possible. And certainty is that doorway that they lead themselves through, where they go to the other side. And happiness is possible. Happiness is possible in uncertainty as well, but uncertainty is something that is a mix with happiness as well. Joy and everyday living, where there's certainty of what you're going to do the next hour, the next day, the next week, the next month, is something that people, when they know what it's like, when they feel it, when they live it, it's not because you don't have problems, it's because there's also the certainty that you know that any problem that you face is a problem that you can overcome. The certainty of life is not a certainty for sure, but the certainty of you believing in you, that you can overcome things, is a certainty that you can believe is very healthy and very, very powerful to get you through anything that you face in your life. The certainty that you cannot be pushed down so hard. Addicts do carry a certain degree of being pushed down so hard that they get back up, but they don't realize how much they get back up. Addicts are strong, and addicts can be things that can be, they can be balls of light, they can be beacons of hope and beacons of light for others to see. Those who recover and those who make their way are the ones who can tell people about the certainty that they feel, how they overcame uncertainty, how they lived uncertainty. And people don't talk of uncertainty and certainty in those terms when it comes to addiction, but it is something for addicts and people who have addicts in their life to easily understand too. And you can think about it, and you can come up with your own stories, you can come up with your own examples of how certainty and uncertainty play a role in your experience with an addict loved one, or you as an addict yourself. If an addict has no uncertainty in their life, then they're an addict who lives a life without addiction. That's the one thing that's true. There is no addict that can live with uncertainty that is recovered and is healthy and does not use. Uncertainty doesn't exist, especially if they live long enough without having to use. There are enough sober days between the last time they used and the day that they think about it, and they look at the world and they see the world as a beautiful place. The world becomes more beautiful as you see it as a place that you are certain that you belong, or you are certain that you'll live till tomorrow. That certainty is what feeds that hope, is what feeds love, the possibility of what comes next. It opens bigger doorways, and certainty is a powerful way to look at life, where you can believe that life is possible. When you are certain of what may happen, when you're certain what may happen, when you're certain what will happen, there can be doubt. But the certainty of knowing that whatever can come is something that you can make happen. And if it doesn't come at the time you want, that you can make it happen down the road. There's no defeat and there's no failure, because you can always get up and try again. That's the certainty of living too, without addiction. So God bless and amen.